All right, it's been a couple of months. It's been a hot minute since the last episode. Yeah. Um, Welcome back to the EarMark podcast. I'm Dante. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in, of course. You are highly appreciated. But yeah, where do I start? Let me just start from the beginning before I get into what I want to talk about today. I took a little hiatus. I think it was supposed to be only for like a month, but it dragged on longer because, you get busy, you get swamped with everything. After life has, sucked all the energy out of you, you just want to rest and be with your family, your friends, and your loved ones, basically, yeah. But I think today's episode is a little different. But not so much because, we talk about this stuff on this podcast a lot. But I guess the main thing that kind of irked me to say, hey, I think it's about time, don't let this be a forever thing, was getting some bad news. And it wasn't news that affected me personally. In a way it did, but it's not my story to tell, right? A long story short, a person who's well known and beloved took their own life, and it really just kind of, hit a switch in my head, and I started thinking a lot. I started thinking about the last couple of months. I started thinking about the last couple of years, and I started thinking about where I am now, where I was, and where I want to be, right? And the one thing that kept coming back to me is over the last few months was mental health. As a man, these are topics that are very, very, very difficult for us to get into. I'm not even gonna lie to you, man. I'm sure some of these conversations are conversations we've never had with our friends, and even when we do have them, they never go in depth or in length. We never really get to share anything of substance. We just kind of touch on it lightly and leave. But yeah. So a couple months ago, I think it started around October, I started seeing an increase in the suicide rate in terms of the reportings, right? For me, the thing that really hit me harder was that the demographic of people who were taking their own lives, these weren't your average citizens. These were very, very popular, very successful, very well-off individuals who were just kind of choosing to check out early. A lot of them were heroes of mine at a certain point in my life. And I think that's what kind of hit me hard. And the succession or the sequence of events that followed after that kind of really got me thinking about mental health from a male's perspective, of course, Yeah, so let me get into it. I saw about 3 or 4 guys commit suicide every month. And these were guys, like I said, they were heroes of mine. And they were fathers, brothers, sons, friends, I think the one thing, I don't even know how to say it, but I don't even know where to start. But the first thing that keeps kind of clicking and the thing at the back of my mind is pressure, right? The pressure to perform. The pressure to be more than you really ought to be, right, has really messed with a lot of men. I think it's about 70% of all suicides are men, I think, worldwide, if I'm not mistaken, last time I checked. And it's been a while, so it might be a little higher or lower, but yeah. And it got me thinking, why is it a lot of men are taking themselves out? I'm not saying it should be more women than men or vice versa or 50-50. That's a different discussion for a different time. But the thing for me was, why is it that a lot of men are choosing to take their lives? And I started looking at my own life. I started looking at the lives of those individuals who sadly took their own lives. And the one thing I kept coming back to was pressure, right? As a man in this society, you always have to go above and beyond. Nowadays, it's not good enough to just be a good provider, a good father, a good husband. You have to go above and beyond, especially with the material possessions. You know, it's funny, we make jokes on this podcast about how a lot of chicks never ever put your character and your morals and values as a man in the top 5 of their criteria. It's always you gotta look a certain way, you gotta earn as much, you gotta be all these things that have to do with nothing about you as an individual, as a man, right? And I started to think that it's not just a intersex dynamic. Men are never really, or even little boys are never really encouraged to find productive ways of dealing with anxiety and pressure and resentment and depression, you know, especially depression. Because the one thing, again, apart from pressure that kept coming back to me is that all these individuals who took their lives always were chronically depressed, you know? And these are people that were very quiet individuals, you get me? So just like a lot of guys, when they have problems, they're just gonna keep it inside. And the truth of the matter is, we all know as men that you really, really, really can't go to your partner or women with your problems because it comes with a lot of disrespect. That's just the truth, you know? I always say with my friends that name me one guy that's ever opened up to his girl and have that shit end well. The room is always silent. That's a bad thing. It's a very, very, very bad thing. And yes, I'm not saying these good women don't exist or whatever, but it just kind of shows you how society kind of deals or mishandles a lot of men's depression and anxiety and emotions in general. I have a lot of people I know that are just going through it every single day. They're just gonna, you know, tough it out and quote unquote be a man about it. And it's hard, you know. And it's very, very kind of disheartening to see people disregard the warning signs. They disregard the cries for help, you know. Be a man. Suck it up, you know. Personally, for me, I've always told men to confide in their peers, confide in other men rather than women, because like I said before, it's never really fared out well for a lot of men. And honestly, it really does come with a lot of disrespect. Now, we can have a lot of chicks saying otherwise, but we live this life. We know the reality of it. Words and actions are different, you know. Women say a lot of nice things. Women say a lot of things, but the one sign, the most obvious thing is just always going to be how they react, what they do, not what they say, because women say a lot of things, like I said before, right? I think the average woman talks about, I think they say the average woman says about 85,000 words and the average man about 55,000. That, yeah. But anyway, you know as a guy that you got these pressures, but you also know that you can't really talk to anyone about it. And even if you did, they wouldn't know how to deal with these emotions you have, which is why I think quote unquote red pill content is important. Because you got to realize something. There's a reason why these type of communities are growing at a rapid rate, right? There's a reason why they're becoming more mainstream. There's a reason why a lot of men seemingly identify with these red pill or whatever male manosphere type content, right? There's a whole generation or generations of men who've felt like they've had their voice, quote unquote, silenced, because if you can't speak, you can't air out your grievances, you have no voice, right? And they're starting to say, hey, here's a guy who's talking about the things I'm going through. And here's a community of men that are going through the same thing. And they get together. Sometimes it's productive. Sometimes it's not. They're just like what it is with every movement, you know? But I think they're really important because they get to feed men with the idea that, listen, you don't have to prove anything to anyone except yourself. What are the things in your life that you want to improve and want to become good at? And then focus on those things. Not because you want to, quote unquote, get more girls or, be a Casanova, but it's about improving yourself and being able rather to read between the lines, because like a lot of dudes out here really are just virgins. I don't want to lie to you, man. I mean, depending on how you see it, you can say it's weird, you can say it's good, you can say whatever it is, but I think that a lot of grown men, and I'm not talking about teenagers, that have never had any long-term dealing with women, and they just don't know how to do that. So these, like I said, these communities and content creators provided a platform and space for disgruntled, for I guess people or men that feel like they were never chosen, But yeah, that aside, I think there's something to be said about your mental state as a man, because I've said this to a couple of my friends that if we don't learn how to channel our emotions, we can become violent. And that's not a good thing for anybody, even yourself, because if you're not inflicting violence on somebody else, you're inflicting it onto yourself. If you get what I'm saying. Also, you got to understand that the thing that's very scary about depressed individuals is that they hardly ever take just their own lives. Yes, I'm not saying they don't, but sometimes, they take other people along with them. You get me? But yeah, you're not alone. And you should never feel alone. My advice is this, right? Don't join communities just because you're disgruntled and you're hurt and you want to hurt, right? Hurt people. You got to find an outlet for yourself. You got to find a group of people that identify with your problems and have gotten through them, by the way, right? Don't just talk to people who are also kind of lost in the sauce, or they're also kind of stewing in that depression or pain or resentment, whatever it is. Talk to people who've been there and gotten out of it, and try to see what you can do. If there's anything you can do to get out of your slump or your depression, right? Life is not about girls. Life for you right now is doing the best you can and being content with that. I know it sounds weird because, if you're ambitious, content is not your best friend. But yes, you need to be more ambitious in your life. And you need to realize that just because you don't got something today doesn't mean you're not going to have it tomorrow, right? You're going through a phase, and phases don't last. Sometimes they go on for years, but it's not forever, right? You're not alone. Reach out, get some help, talk to somebody. Train professionals usually, because, everyday people don't even know how to deal with their own problems. Sometimes they can't even help you with yours, right? But talk to somebody who at least can give you an ear and kind of try to see things from your perspective. Don't talk to people who are fucking condescending, all right? Don't talk to people who are always going to try to undermine what you're going through. It's a real thing. Your body is reacting to it because it's real. You feel it. You're depressed. You can't, you know what I'm saying? But also, don't let your depression absolve you of responsibility, right? So one thing I was going to say, don't let it absolve you of your responsibility. Just because you're hurt doesn't mean you should hurt. Just because you're angry because you've been done wrong, it doesn't give you an excuse to do the same thing or to do worse or to try to reciprocate. It doesn't. At the end of the day, being depressed takes a lot of energy out of you. Really, really, really does. It fucks with your immune system. It fucks with your quality of life, because let's be real, you are what you think. So as a man thinketh, he shall become, something like that. But honestly, I'm really kind of hoping that somebody hears this and realizes that what they're going through is completely normal. They're not the only ones, right? But also to acknowledge the fact that society is putting these pressures on you. Not that you shouldn't provide, not that you shouldn't be a man of good quality, but a man of good character too. But realize when you're going a little too far, right? The one thing you gotta focus on is providing your absolute best. Your absolute best. And being fucking content with that. You did your best at whatever point you're at. You know? You gotta be happy with what you have and always strive for more. But also, let me just say this, all right? Don't be a simp. Don't be the type of guy who allows a chick to fuck with your mental health, right? To put all these pressures on you because she sees 1, 2, 3 on Instagram or whatever. Live your life. Do things that make you happy. If it's getting a little too much, rest. Take a breather. There's nothing wrong with a little reset. There's nothing wrong with even starting again from the beginning, from scratch, whatever it is. You're no good to anybody if you're not around anymore. It hurts everybody when you take your own, you know? Love yourself and find people that try to reciprocate that. If they don't, let them go, no matter how much you love them. Don't let anybody gaslight you. And don't let anybody put you under any unnecessary pressure, all right? Because at the end of the day, that pressure that they're putting on you is pressure that they're alleviating from themselves. You get me? They're trying to get you to do things for them so they don't have to do it for themselves. All right? Human beings are selfish creatures. It's time you be a little selfish and protecting your energy as well. So next time, take care of yourself.